When I asked about my daughter's wedding, my son-in-law replied, "We got married yesterday. Only special people. No one to embarrass the family." A week later, he sent me a message. "Send me the rent money?" I answered, "Didn't I tell you? I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached." I'm Martin, and at 62 years old, I thought I'd experienced most of life's disappointments. I was wrong. Nothing could have prepared me for the phone call that would shatter everything I believed about being a father. It was a Tuesday morning in October when my neighbor Mrs. Henderson knocked on my door, her face flushed with excitement. She was holding her phone, scrolling through what looked like wedding photos. "Martin, dear, I had no idea Stella was getting married. The photos are absolutely beautiful. You must be so proud." I stared at her, confused. "Wedding photos?" She turned her phone toward me, and there it was. My daughter Stella in a stunning white dress, beaming next to Albert in an expensive tuxedo. The ceremony looked elaborate, held at some upscale venue I didn't recognize. There were at least 50 people in the background, all dressed to the nines, all celebrating what was clearly the wedding of the year. My legs felt weak. When was this taken? Yesterday, according to the Post. Look how radiant she looks. Yesterday. My only daughter had gotten married yesterday, and I knew nothing about it. I thanked Mrs. Henderson somehow, closed the door, and immediately called Stella. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through my phone, looking for Albert's number. He answered on the third ring, his voice casual, almost bored. "Oh, hey Martin, what's up?" "What's up?" My voice cracked. "I just found out you and Stella got married yesterday. What's up is that nobody told me my daughter was getting married." There was a pause, then Albert sighed like I was bothering him with something trivial. "Yeah, we got married. It was just a small thing, you know, only special people. We didn't want anyone there who might, well, embarrass the family." Embarrass the family. Those words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made Stella countless breakfasts when she was little, where I'd helped her with homework, where I'd bandaged her scraped knees, and now I was someone who would embarrass her. "Albert, I'm her father. Look, Martin, it's nothing personal. Stella just wanted everything to be perfect, you know. Classy. We had her boss there, my colleagues, people from the country club. It needed to have a certain image. I wasn't good enough for their image. I thought about my small house, my old car, my work clothes hanging in the closet. I'd been a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing plant for 35 years before retiring. Honest work. Work that had paid for Stella's college, her car, her apartment when she couldn't find a job right after graduation. "Where is Stella? I want to talk to her." "She's sleeping. The honeymoon was exhausting. We went to Napa Valley, really expensive place. Worth every penny though. Honeymoon." They'd gone on a honeymoon while I sat at home completely unaware that my daughter had become a married woman. After Albert hung up, I sat in my living room staring at the photos Mrs. Henderson had shown me. I could see them clearly in my mind. Stella looked happy, genuinely happy. But in all those photos, in that crowd of 50 people, her father wasn't there. I started thinking back, trying to understand when things had changed between us. When Stella was growing up, we were close. After her mother died when Stella was 16, it was just the two of us. We had our routines, our inside jokes. She used to call me every week when she first moved out, sometimes just to ask how to cook something or to complain about her job. But then Albert came into the picture 2 years ago. Slowly, the calls became less frequent. When I did see Stella, Albert was always there, steering conversations, making subtle comments about my house needing updates, my car being old, my clothes being unfashionable. I remembered one dinner at their apartment where Albert had laughed at my confusion over their fancy coffee machine. "It's European, Martin. You probably wouldn't understand." Stella had laughed too, but it wasn't a kind laugh. Looking back now, I could see the pattern. The gradual exclusion. The way Albert would change the subject whenever I mentioned family traditions or stories from when Stella was young. The way Stella started agreeing with his opinions about everything, even when they contradicted things she'd believed her whole life. I had become an embarrassment slowly, so gradually that I hadn't noticed it happening. The man who had raised her, who had sacrificed for her, who had loved her unconditionally, was now too beneath their social aspirations to witness her wedding day. The phone rang that evening. It was Stella, finally calling back. "Daddy?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "Stella, I heard you called Albert. I found out about your wedding from Mrs. Henderson. She saw photos on social media." Silence stretched between us. I waited for an apology, an explanation, some sign that she understood how deeply she had hurt me. "Daddy, you have to understand, it was Albert's family that paid for everything. They have certain expectations." Even her excuse was about money, about appearances, not about love, not about family, not about the man who had raised her alone after her mother died. "I raised you, Stella. I was there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, every broken heart, and you didn't think I deserved to see you get married? It's not about deserving, Daddy. It's about fitting in. Fitting in." I didn't fit into the life she wanted now. The life Albert had shown her was possible if she was willing to leave her past behind. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the empty chair where I should have been sitting. About walking her down the aisle, a moment I'd dreamed about since she was little. About the father-daughter dance we'd never have. But what hurt most was realizing that this wasn't a spontaneous decision. They had planned this wedding, sent invitations, chosen a venue, picked a date. Through all of that planning, at no point had my daughter thought her father should be there. I was no longer part of her special moments. I had become the embarrassing secret she kept hidden from her new life. As I lay in bed that night, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, raw and deep, but underneath it, something else was growing. A quiet realization that if I didn't matter enough to be at her wedding, maybe I needed to reconsider just how much she should matter in my life. I had no idea that within a week I would discover just how little I truly meant to the daughter I had loved unconditionally for 28 years. The text message came 7 days after I learned about the wedding. 7 days of sleepless nights and a hollow feeling in my chest that wouldn't go away. I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking coffee and trying to focus on the morning news when my phone buzzed. It was from Albert. "Send me the rent money? Send me." I stared at the screen, reading it 3 times before the full audacity of it sank in. No greeting, no acknowledgement of the pain they'd caused, just a demand for money, phrased like it was the most natural thing in the world. My hands trembled as I typed back, "What rent money?" His response came immediately, "For the apartment. It's due tomorrow. Send it to my account." I sat there, phone in hand, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. What apartment? What rent? I called Stella immediately. "Daddy, hi." Her voice was cheerful, like nothing had happened. "Stella, Albert just asked me to send rent money. What's he talking about?" There was a pause, then a nervous laugh. "Oh, that. Well, we've been having some financial difficulties. Albert's between jobs right now, and my salary isn't enough to cover everything." "What does that have to do with me?" Another pause, longer this time. "Well, you've been helping us with the rent for the past few months. I thought you knew that." I felt the blood drain from my face. "I've been what?" "The rent, Daddy. You've been sending us $1,200 every month since June, for the apartment." My mind raced back through my bank statements. There had been withdrawals, yes, $1,200 every month, but Stella had told me those were for something else entirely. "Stella, you told me that money was for your student loans. You said you were having trouble making the payments." Silence. "You said you were struggling with the loan payments, and you didn't want to default. You said it would ruin your credit." "Well," her voice was smaller now, "technically we were struggling financially. You lied to me." "I didn't lie, Daddy. I just simplified the situation." Simplified. She had looked me in the eye for months, spinning stories about student loan hardships, while actually using my money to pay for the apartment she shared with Albert. The apartment where they planned their secret wedding. The apartment I was apparently expected to keep funding while being too embarrassing to invite to their marriage ceremony. "How long, Stella? How long have you been lying to me about what that money was for?" "Since June, but Daddy, we really needed help. Albert's firm laid him off, and I'm barely making enough at the gallery." June. 4 months of lies. 4 months of me believing I was helping my daughter avoid financial ruin, while she was actually funding a lifestyle she couldn't afford with a man who considered me beneath their social circle. "And you never thought to tell me the truth? I knew you'd worry, and I knew you'd want to meet with us about budgeting and all that. Albert doesn't really like when you get involved in our finances. Albert doesn't like it. My own daughter was letting her husband dictate whether her father could be involved in financial decisions that directly affected me." I hung up and immediately called my bank, requesting the last 6 months of statements. As I sat there going through them, the full picture became clear. Every month since June, Stella had called with some crisis. The student loans in June, a medical emergency in July that turned out to be Albert's expensive dental work. Car repairs in August that I later learned was actually Albert buying new rims for his BMW. Each time I had transferred the money without question because I trusted my daughter, because I believed she was struggling and needed her father's help, because I loved her enough to sacrifice my own small luxuries to make sure she was okay. But there had been no student loan crisis, no medical emergency, no car trouble, just a young couple living beyond their means and using her father as a personal ATM while keeping him out of their real lives. The phone rang. Albert. Martin, about that rent money, I really need it today. The landlord is being a real pain about late payments. Albert, Stella just told me the truth about what that money has been for. Yeah, well, she shouldn't have. But whatever, the point is we need it. I've got a job interview next week, so this should be the last time. The last time. He said it like I owed him something, like my daughter's lies entitled him to my retirement money. Albert, you didn't think I deserved to know that I was paying your rent? Look, Martin, I don't really have time for drama right now. Just send the money, okay? We'll talk about it later. Drama. Wanting honesty from my own daughter was drama. No. What? I said no. I'm not sending any money. There was a long pause. When Albert spoke again, his voice had changed completely. Gone was the casual dismissiveness. Now he sounded angry. Martin, you can't just cut us off like that. We're family now. Stella's your daughter. You have responsibilities. Responsibilities. To the man who had convinced my daughter I was too embarrassing for their wedding. My responsibility was to raise Stella to be honest and independent. Clearly, I failed at the first part. Jesus, Martin, don't be so dramatic. So we didn't tell you exactly what the money was for. Big deal. The point is, we needed help, and you helped. That's what families do. Is it what families do, Albert? Because in my family, we invite each other to weddings. He hung up. 20 minutes later, Stella called back, crying. Daddy, please don't do this. Albert's really stressed about money, and if we can't pay the rent, we might get evicted. Then maybe you should have thought about that before lying to me for 4 months. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I didn't tell you the truth, but please, we really need this money. Stella, do you have any idea how this makes me feel? You've been taking my money while shutting me out of your life. You got married without telling me, and now you want me to fund the apartment you share with your husband. How does that make sense to you? It's not like that, Daddy. Then explain to me what it is like. Albert says you wouldn't understand our lifestyle, that you'd judge our choices. What choices, Stella? Living beyond your means? Lying to your father? Excluding family from the most important day of your life? You're being mean. Mean. I was being mean for expecting honesty and basic respect from my own daughter. That evening I did something I should have done months ago. I went through every transaction, every lie, every manipulation. The money I'd sent wasn't just for rent. There had been other requests, always framed as emergencies or necessities. $300 for groceries that I later realized was their weekly wine budget. $500 for utilities during a month when I later learned they'd taken a weekend trip to the mountains. $800 for car insurance that coincided perfectly with Albert buying a new sound system for his BMW. In total, over the past 4 months, I had sent them $7,800, money from my retirement savings, money I had planned to use for home repairs, for a small vacation, for the security that comes with having a financial cushion at 62. Instead, I had funded their lifestyle while being deemed unworthy of their honesty or their celebration. As I sat there with the bank statement spread across my kitchen table, I realized something that made my stomach turn. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. They had trained me to be their financial safety net while keeping me emotionally isolated. I was good enough to solve their problems, but not good enough to share their joy. The next morning, Albert sent another text. Martin, seriously, send the money. We'll get evicted. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back 5 words that would change everything. I didn't tell you what. Albert called me 3 times after I sent that cryptic message. I didn't answer. I needed time to think, to process what I was about to discover about my daughter and her husband. What I found out over the next few days would destroy whatever remained of my illusions about the family I thought I knew. It started with Mrs. Henderson again. She knocked on my door that Thursday afternoon, practically bouncing with excitement. "Martin, I hope you don't mind, but I showed my sister Carol the wedding photos. She's been asking about you since she heard Stella got married. She wants to know if you have more pictures from the ceremony." "I don't have any pictures, Mrs. Henderson." Her face fell. "Oh, well, maybe Stella hasn't shared them with you yet. But Martin, I have to say, that venue must have cost a fortune. The Grandview Estate. That's where the mayor's daughter got married last year. I heard it's $20,000 just to book the place. $20,000. Just for the venue. I felt sick. And the flowers," she continued, oblivious to my discomfort. "I've never seen arrangements like that. Those white orchids. They must have cost thousands. And did you see how many people were there?" Carol counted at least 60 guests in the background of one photo. 60 guests. A $20,000 venue. Orchid arrangements worth thousands. This wasn't the small, intimate ceremony Albert had described. This was an elaborate, expensive wedding that someone had paid for while I sat at home, completely unaware it was happening. After Mrs. Henderson left, I did something I hadn't done since Stella was a teenager sneaking out at night. I started investigating. I found Stella's Instagram account, which she had never shared with me. The wedding photos were all there, posted for the world to see. The caption under the main photo read, "The most perfect day with my perfect husband and our perfect families. So grateful for everyone who made this magical day possible. Our perfect families." I scrolled through the comments, looking for some mention of me, some explanation for why the bride's father wasn't in any photos. Instead, I found comments from people I didn't recognize. People praising the elegant affair and asking about the gorgeous venue. One comment stood out. "Albert, your parents threw the wedding of the century. Your mom's planning skills are incredible." Albert's parents had paid for the wedding, the same parents who, according to Albert, had certain expectations about who should be invited. The same parents who had apparently decided that Stella's father didn't meet their standards. I kept scrolling through Stella's social media, going back months. What I found painted a picture of a life I didn't recognize. Photos of expensive dinners, weekend trips to wine country, shopping sprees at high-end stores, and in many of the photos there were other people. Albert's colleagues, his family, Stella's new friends from what she called her gallery crowd. In one photo from 2 months ago, Stella was at what looked like an expensive restaurant with Albert's parents. The caption read, "So lucky to have such amazing in-laws who treat me like their own daughter, like their own daughter." While I was sending rent money for an apartment I thought she couldn't afford, she was being treated like a daughter by Albert's family. The family that had money for elaborate weddings and expensive dinners, but had somehow decided that the man who actually raised her wasn't worthy of inclusion. That evening, I called my neighbor Jim, whose son worked at the same gallery where Stella claimed to be barely making ends meet. "Hey Jim, I hope you don't mind me asking, but how's business at that art gallery downtown? The one where Stella works?" "Oh, it's doing great. My son says they've been incredibly busy. Great location, wealthy clientele. Stella's doing really well there too, from what I hear. Management track, good salary. My son mentioned she's making close to $60,000 a year now. $60,000 a year. That was more than I had made in my last few years before retirement, and yet she had been telling me she could barely afford her student loan payments." I hung up and immediately went to my computer. If Stella was making $60,000 a year and Albert had been between jobs for only a few months, how were they unable to afford $1,200 in rent? The answer came when I decided to drive past their apartment building the next morning. I had never actually seen where they lived. When I got there, I understood everything. It wasn't just an apartment. It was a luxury complex in the most expensive part of town, the kind of place with a doorman, valet parking, and rent that probably started at $3,000 a month. I sat in my car staring at the building, realizing that my $1,200 wasn't covering their rent. It was probably covering less than half of it. They weren't struggling to survive. They were struggling to maintain a lifestyle that was far above their means, and they had decided that I should help fund it while being kept ignorant of the truth. That afternoon, I got a call from Stella. Her voice was strained, worried. "Daddy, Albert told me you're being difficult about the rent money." "What did you mean when you said you didn't tell him something?" "I meant that there are things about my finances that you and Albert don't know." "What kind of things?" "The kind of things that might surprise you." There was a long pause. "Daddy, you're scaring me. Are you okay? Are you having money problems?" "Money problems?" She was worried that I might not be able to continue funding their lifestyle. Stella, I want you to answer something honestly. How much is your rent? Another pause. Why do you want to know that? Because I've been paying what I thought was your rent for 4 months, and I think I deserve to know what I'm actually paying for. Daddy, it's complicated. It's a simple question, Stella. How much do you pay in rent every month? $2,800. My heart sank. I had been sending them $1,200 toward a $2,800 apartment. An apartment that, combined with Stella's $60,000 salary, they should have been able to afford without my help if they had made reasonable choices. And Albert? What happened to his job? He's between positions right now. When did he lose his job? In April. April. He had been unemployed since April, but they hadn't asked for my help until June. That meant they had tried to maintain their expensive lifestyle for 2 months before deciding to bring me in as their financial backup plan. Stella, if Albert hasn't worked since April and you make $60,000 a year, why do you need my money? Daddy, $60,000 isn't as much as it sounds like, and Albert has certain expectations about how we should live. Expectations. Albert expected to live in a luxury apartment and maintain an expensive lifestyle even while unemployed, and my daughter had decided that I should help make that possible. What about Albert's parents? They paid for your wedding. Can't they help with living expenses? They don't believe in enabling dependency. They think Albert should figure things out on his own. The irony was stunning. Albert's wealthy parents wouldn't enable their son's poor financial choices, but they expected Stella's father to do exactly that. And Stella had gone along with it, lying to me for months to ensure the money kept flowing. Stella, I need you to understand something. I've been living on a fixed income since I retired. The money I've been sending you has come from my savings. Money I set aside for emergencies, for home repairs, for the possibility that I might need medical care I can't afford. I know, Daddy, and we're grateful. Are you? Because grateful people don't usually lie about what they need money for. Grateful people don't exclude their father from the most important day of their lives. That wasn't about being grateful or not grateful. That was about Albert's family and their expectations. So Albert's family's expectations matter more than your father's feelings? She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. Daddy, I love you, but Albert is my husband now. I have to think about our future, about fitting into his world. Fitting into his world, the world where I was too embarrassing to be seen but wealthy enough to be useful. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and began researching something I had never thought I would need to know about: how to protect myself from financial manipulation by family members. What I learned was enlightening and heartbreaking. There were entire websites dedicated to helping people who had been financially exploited by their own children. Stories from parents who had discovered too late that their generosity had been taken advantage of by adult children who saw them as nothing more than a source of money. I also learned something else, something that made my blood run cold. According to one website, financial exploitation often escalated. Adult children who successfully manipulated one parent for money often became more demanding, more entitled, more creative in their requests. They frequently involved spouses or partners in the manipulation, creating a united front designed to maximize the financial benefit while minimizing the emotional connection. The pattern was predictable. Start with legitimate-sounding emergencies, gradually increase the frequency and amount of requests, involve emotional manipulation about family loyalty, and always maintain that the parent was obligated to help because of their relationship. Reading those words, I realized that Albert's demand for rent money wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. If I continued to enable this behavior, it would only get worse. But I also realized something else, something that gave me the first glimmer of hope I had felt since learning about the wedding. I wasn't powerless in this situation. I had something they needed, and I had the right to control how it was used. For the first time in months, I held the cards in this relationship. The question was, what was I going to do with that power? The confrontation I'd been dreading came on a Saturday morning. I was in my garage, organizing tools I hadn't used in months, when I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Through the window, I saw Albert's BMW parked behind my old Honda. Both Albert and Stella were getting out, and neither looked happy. I had been expecting this visit since I stopped responding to their calls 3 days ago. After Albert's last angry voicemail demanding to know what my cryptic message meant, I knew they would eventually show up in person. They didn't knock. Stella used her key, the one I had given her years ago for emergencies. I heard the front door open and their voices carrying through the house. Dad, we need to talk. I walked into the living room to find them both standing there. Stella looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap. Albert looked angry, his jaw set in a way that reminded me of a teenager about to throw a tantrum. "Sit down," Albert said, gesturing to my own couch like he owned the place. "I'm fine standing," I replied. "Martin, we need to clear some things up," Albert continued, his tone condescending. "This game you're playing, this mysterious message thing, it's getting old. We need the rent money, and we need it today." "What game, Albert? Don't act stupid. That message about not telling me something. What were you talking about?" I looked at Stella, who was staring at the floor. "Did you tell him about our conversation? About the real cost of your rent?" She nodded without looking up. "Good. Then he knows that I've been paying less than half of your actual living expenses while thinking I was covering your basic needs." Albert's face flushed red. "So what? You're her father. You're supposed to help." "Help with what, Albert?" "Help you live beyond your means. Help you maintain a lifestyle you can't afford. We're not living beyond our means. We're living appropriately for our social circle." "Our social circle. The social circle that didn't include me. Albert, you've been unemployed for 6 months. Stella makes a good salary, but not enough to cover a luxury apartment and the kind of lifestyle I've seen on her social media. You're absolutely living beyond your means. That's temporary. I have job prospects. For 6 months, you've had job prospects. Meanwhile, I've been subsidizing your life while being told I'm too embarrassing to attend your wedding." Stella finally looked up. "Daddy, that's not fair." "What's not fair, Stella?" "That I'm upset about being excluded from your wedding, or that I'm questioning why I should pay for an apartment I'm not allowed to visit." "You can visit anytime you want." "Can I? When, Stella? When have you ever invited me over? When have you ever said, 'Dad, come see our place'? In 4 months of paying your rent, have you ever once suggested I see where my money is going?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Albert stepped forward, his voice getting louder. "Look, Martin, I don't know what kind of head games you're trying to play, but this is simple. Family helps family. You help us, we appreciate it, everyone moves on." "And what do I get in return, Albert?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, in this family arrangement where I help you, what do I get? Honesty? Respect? Inclusion? Because so far, all I've gotten is lies and exclusion. You get the satisfaction of helping your daughter. Do I? Because it doesn't feel like I'm helping my daughter. It feels like I'm enabling 2 adults who refuse to live within their means." Albert's composure finally cracked. "You know what your problem is, Martin? You're bitter. You're bitter because we have a better life than you do. And instead of being happy for us, you want to drag us down to your level." The words hit like a slap. Drag them down to my level. This from a man who hadn't worked in 6 months but still expected to live like he had a 6-figure income. "Albert, what level is that exactly? The level where I pay my own bills? The level where I don't lie to my family? The level where I treat people with basic respect? The level where you live in a tiny house and drive a 15-year-old car and act like that's something to be proud of? I am proud of it. I paid for that house myself. I earned every payment on that car. I've never asked anyone else to fund my lifestyle." Stella stood up suddenly, tears in her eyes. "Stop it, both of you. This isn't helping anything. You're right, Stella. It's not helping. What would help is honesty. What would help is being treated like family instead of like a bank." "We do treat you like family, Daddy." "No, you don't. Family members get invited to weddings. Family members get told the truth about why they're being asked for money. Family members get treated with respect." Albert sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. Fine, Martin. You want the truth? Here's the truth. My parents have money, but they've cut me off because they think I'm irresponsible. Stella's job pays okay, but not enough for the kind of life we want to live. We need help, and you're the only family member who's willing to provide it." Finally, honesty. Brutal, selfish honesty. "So I'm not family, Albert, I'm a resource." "That's not what I said." "That's exactly what you said. Your parents won't enable your poor choices, so you found someone who would. And you found that someone by having my daughter lie to me about what the money was for." Stella was crying now. "Daddy, please, we really do need help. If we get evicted, I don't know what we'll do." "You'll do what every other couple does when they can't afford their lifestyle. You'll find a cheaper place to live." "We can't do that. Albert's job prospects depend on maintaining a certain image." "What job prospects, Stella? He's been unemployed for 6 months. Clearly the image isn't working." Albert stood up abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this from someone who doesn't understand how the professional world works." "You're right, Albert. I don't understand how the professional world works. In my world, when you can't afford something, you don't buy it. When you need help, you ask honestly. When someone helps you, you treat them with respect. Your world is small, Martin. Maybe it is, but at least it's honest. They left 20 minutes later, after Albert made several more demands for money and Stella made several more tearful pleas about their desperate situation. I watched them drive away in Albert's BMW, probably heading back to their luxury apartment, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For months I had been carrying the weight of their financial problems that, I now realized, were entirely self-created. They weren't struggling because of bad luck or unforeseen circumstances. They were struggling because they had chosen to live a lifestyle they couldn't afford and expected someone else to subsidize it. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my brother Robert in Phoenix. "Martin, good to hear from you. How are things?" "They've been better, Rob. I need some advice." I told him everything. The secret wedding, the lies about the money, the confrontation that morning. Robert listened without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of disbelief. "Jesus, Martin, I'm sorry. That's brutal. The thing is, Rob, I don't know what to do. She's still my daughter." "Is she?" "I mean, I know she's your biological daughter, but is she acting like your daughter?" The question hit me hard because I knew the answer. "What would you do, Rob?" "Honestly, I'd cut them off completely, but that's easy for me to say since it's not my kid. But what if she really does get evicted? What if they end up homeless?" "Martin, they won't end up homeless. Albert's parents have money. Stella has a job. They have options. They just prefer the option where you pay for their choices." After I hung up, I sat in my living room thinking about what Robert had said. They had options. They weren't helpless victims of circumstances beyond their control. They were adults who had made a series of poor decisions and were looking for someone else to bear the consequences. But there was something else bothering me, something that went beyond the money and the lies. It was the way Albert had spoken to me in my own home. The casual disrespect, the assumption that he could make demands of me, the suggestion that my life was somehow inferior to theirs. I had spent my entire adult life working hard, saving money, living within my means. I had raised a daughter on my own after my wife died, sacrificing my own wants to make sure Stella had what she needed. I had never been rich, but I had always been honest, always been responsible, always been there for the people I loved. And now I was being told that my life was small by a man who couldn't hold a job and expected his father-in-law to pay his bills. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I wrote a letter to Stella explaining exactly how I felt and exactly what I was going to do. I didn't mail it that night. I wanted to sleep on it to make sure I was making the right choice. But as I lay in bed, I realized something important. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not like a walking ATM. Not like an embarrassing relative. Not like someone whose only value was financial. I felt like a man who deserved better than what he was getting from the people who were supposed to love him most. The next morning, I mailed the letter. In it, I told Stella that I would no longer be sending money for any reason. I told her that when she was ready to have an honest relationship with her father, she could call me, and I told her that I loved her, but I wouldn't allow myself to be used anymore. 3 days later, my phone started ringing. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to hear the arguments, the pleas, the accusations. I needed time to get used to the idea that I had finally stood up for myself. What I didn't know was that my decision would force a confrontation that would reveal just how deep the manipulation went and how far Albert was willing to go to maintain control over the situation. I was about to discover that the rent money was just the beginning of what they had planned for me. The pounding on my door started at 7:30 on a Thursday morning, 2 weeks after I had sent the letter cutting off all financial support. I was in my kitchen making coffee when the violent knocking began, followed immediately by Albert's voice shouting my name. "Martin, open this door. We need to talk." I looked through the peephole and saw both of them standing on my porch. Albert was pacing like a caged animal, his face red with anger. Stella stood behind him, and even through the distorted view of the peephole, I could see she had been crying. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. "We got your letter," Albert said immediately, waving the envelope in my face. "What the hell is this supposed to mean?" "It means exactly what it says, Albert. I'm not sending any more money." You can't just cut us off like that. Actually, I can. It's my money. Stella stepped forward, her voice breaking. Daddy, please. We're about to lose everything. Everything meaning what, Stella? Your luxury apartment? Your expensive lifestyle? Our home, Daddy. We're going to lose our home. It's not your home if you can't afford it without someone else paying the bills. Albert pushed past me into my house without being invited. We need to settle this like adults, Martin. Get out of my house, Albert. Not until we work this out. He sat down on my couch like he owned it. Look, I get that you're upset about the wedding thing. Fine. We should have handled that differently. But this financial tantrum of yours needs to stop. Financial tantrum, as if expecting honesty and respect from my own daughter was childish behavior. Albert, I want you to leave. Now. I'm not leaving until you agree to keep helping us. Stella is your daughter. You have an obligation. My obligation was to raise her to be an independent, honest adult. Clearly, I failed. Stella started crying harder. Daddy, how can you say that? Because it's true, Stella. An honest adult doesn't lie to her father for months about why she needs money. An independent adult doesn't expect someone else to subsidize her lifestyle. Albert stood up, his face getting redder. You know what your problem is, Martin? You're jealous. You're jealous because we have opportunities you never had. What opportunities, Albert? The opportunity to live beyond your means? The opportunity to lie to family? The opportunity to be supported by someone else's retirement savings? The opportunity to be part of something bigger than this? He gestured around my small living room. The opportunity to matter. I do matter, Albert. Just not to you. You matter as Stella's father. That comes with responsibilities. It also comes with rights. The right to honesty, the right to respect, the right to be included in my daughter's life. You were included. You're being included right now. I'm being included in your financial problems. I wasn't included in your wedding, your celebrations, your actual life. I'm only included when you need something. Stella wiped her eyes and looked directly at me. Daddy, if you don't help us, we're going to be evicted next week. Then you'll need to find somewhere else to live. We can't afford anywhere else. You can't afford where you're living now, Stella. That's the problem. Albert started pacing again. This is ridiculous. Martin, you're retired. You're living alone in a house that's too big for you. You don't have major expenses. You can afford to help us. Whether I can afford it isn't the point. Then what is the point? The point is that I shouldn't have to. She's your daughter, and you're her husband. Taking care of her is your job now, not mine. Albert's voice got louder. You're being selfish. I'm being selfish? I've sent you over $7,000 in 4 months while being lied to about what it was for. I've been excluded from the most important day of my daughter's life. I've been treated like an embarrassment and an ATM, and I'm the selfish one. You're her father. Fathers help their children. Fathers help their children when they need help. You don't need help, Albert. You need enablement. There's a difference. Stella sat down heavily, putting her head in her hands. I don't understand why you're being so cruel. Cruel? Stella, what's cruel is lying to your father for months. What's cruel is excluding him from your wedding. What's cruel is treating him like he exists only to solve your problems. I never treated you like that. Then explain to me why I haven't been invited to your apartment. Explain why you never call just to talk. Explain why the only time I hear from you is when you need money. She couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. Albert stopped pacing and turned to face me directly. Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's talk about what happens when you get old, Martin. Really old. When you need help with things you can't do anymore. Who do you think is going to take care of you? The threat was barely veiled. Help us now, or don't expect help when you need it. Are you threatening me, Albert? I'm explaining reality. Family relationships are reciprocal. You help us now, we help you later. And if I don't help you now, then you'll find out how lonely it gets when you're old and have no family who cares about you. Stella looked up sharply. Albert, don't say things like that. But Albert wasn't backing down. It's the truth, Stella. He wants to abandon us when we need help. Fine. But he shouldn't expect us to be there when he needs help. I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about power, about control, about Albert trying to ensure that I would remain their financial resource by threatening to isolate me completely if I didn't comply. Albert, are you saying that my relationship with my daughter depends on whether I continue to pay your bills? I'm saying that relationships require give and take. So far, you've been taking more than you've been giving. What have I been taking? The satisfaction of helping family. The knowledge that you're contributing to our success. Your success? Albert, you've been unemployed for 6 months. You're about to be evicted. What success are you talking about? His face turned purple with rage. You don't understand anything about building a life, do you? You've lived small your whole life. Small house, small job, small ambitions. We're trying to build something bigger. You're trying to build something with other people's money. We're trying to build something that will last. By lying and manipulating people who love you. By doing what we have to do to succeed. I looked at Stella, hoping to see some sign that she disagreed with Albert's approach, some indication that she understood how wrong this all was. Instead, I saw her nodding along with his words. Stella, do you agree with Albert? Do you think lying to me was justified? She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was small but clear. I think we did what we had to do to survive. Survive? They had been surviving in a luxury apartment, taking expensive trips, living a lifestyle far above their means, all while telling me they were struggling to pay basic bills. And you think it's right to threaten me with abandonment if I don't continue to fund your lifestyle? Another long pause. I think families should support each other, even when that support is based on lies, even when it's complicated. That was when I knew, really knew. This wasn't a temporary situation brought on by Albert's unemployment. This wasn't a desperate young couple making poor choices under pressure. This was a calculated long-term strategy to use me as their financial safety net while keeping me emotionally isolated. Albert had trained my daughter to see me as a resource rather than as a father. He had convinced her that lying was acceptable if it served their purposes, and he had made it clear that my value to them was entirely dependent on my willingness to continue funding their choices. I want both of you to leave, I said quietly. Martin, we're not done talking, Albert replied. Yes, we are. Get out of my house. You're making a mistake, Albert said as he headed toward the door. A big mistake. Don't come crying to us when you realize what you've thrown away. Stella stopped at the door and turned back to me. Daddy, please, just think about it. We really do need help. What you need, Stella, is to learn how to live within your means. What we need is for you to act like a father. I have been acting like a father. I raised you. I supported you. I loved you unconditionally. But being a father doesn't mean being a permanent ATM. It means being there when your family needs you. I was there, Stella. I was there for 26 years. But you decided I wasn't good enough to be there for your wedding day. She started crying again, but this time I didn't comfort her. I couldn't, because I finally understood that her tears weren't about sadness or regret. They were about frustration that her manipulation wasn't working anymore. After they left, I sat in my living room for a long time, thinking about Albert's threat. The suggestion that my relationship with my daughter was contingent on my financial support. The implication that I would be abandoned in my old age if I didn't continue to enable their poor choices. I realized that Albert had revealed something important. He had shown me that in his mind, and apparently in Stella's mind, I had never been valued for who I was. I had been valued for what I could provide, the father who had raised her, who had sacrificed for her, who had loved her unconditionally, wasn't enough. The only version of me that mattered to them was the version that wrote checks and asked no questions. That evening I did something I had been putting off for weeks. I called a lawyer, not because I wanted to take legal action against them, but because I wanted to protect myself. Albert's threat about my future care had been clear enough. If I was going to be on my own as I aged, I needed to make sure my assets were protected and my wishes were clearly documented. I also needed to make sure that if something happened to me, my money wouldn't automatically go to people who had already proven they couldn't be trusted with it. As I made that call, I realized something that should have made me sad, but actually made me feel relieved. I was finally free to make decisions based on what was best for me, rather than what would keep my daughter and her husband happy. For the first time in months, I was putting myself first, and it felt like the right thing to do. 6 months passed before I heard from them again. 6 months of quiet mornings, peaceful evenings, and the gradual return of my self-respect. I had settled into a routine that felt healthy for the first time in years. Morning walks, coffee with neighbors, working in my garden, reading books I had been meaning to get to for decades. I thought about Stella often, but the sharp pain of her betrayal had faded into something more manageable. A sadness for what we had lost, but also a relief that I was no longer walking on eggshells, waiting for the next financial crisis that would somehow become my responsibility. Then, on a Tuesday in April, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. "Mr. Holloway, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the County Sheriff's Office. I'm calling about your daughter, Stella Morrison." My heart stopped. "Is she okay? Has something happened?" "She's fine, sir. But I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with her and her husband." "What kind of questions?" "We've received reports of elder financial abuse. Your name came up as a potential victim." Elder financial abuse. The words hung in the air like a diagnosis I hadn't expected. "I'm not sure I understand, Detective. Could we meet in person, Mr. Holloway? I think it would be easier to explain face to face." An hour later, Detective Chen sat in my living room, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She pulled out a small notebook and looked at me carefully. "Mr. Holloway, we've been investigating Albert Morrison for several months now. His name has come up in connection with multiple cases of financial manipulation involving family members. Multiple cases. His previous girlfriend's grandmother, his ex-wife's father. A pattern of targeting older family members for financial support through manipulation and emotional blackmail." I felt sick. "How many people?" "At least 4 that we know of. The amounts range from $5,000 to over $30,000. In each case, the victims were told elaborate stories about temporary financial hardships, medical emergencies, or business opportunities. $30,000. I had thought my $7,800 was bad enough. The reason I'm here, Mr. Holloway, is that your daughter contacted our office 3 weeks ago." "Stella called you?" "She came in person. She wanted to report that her husband had been financially abusing you without her knowledge." I blinked, trying to process what I was hearing. "Without her knowledge?" "According to your daughter, she recently discovered that Albert had been lying to her about your financial contributions. She claims she thought you were helping with small amounts for groceries and utilities, not paying substantial portions of their rent and living expenses." "That's not true." Detective Chen looked up from her notebook. "Can you explain?" "Stella knew exactly what I was paying and why. She's the one who asked for the money. She's the one who lied about what it was for." "Are you certain about that?" "I have bank records. I have text messages. Stella called me directly every month to ask for money. She gave me detailed stories about student loans and medical expenses and car repairs. Albert was often right there when she made the calls." Detective Chen made notes. "Do you still have those text messages?" "Some of them." "Mr. Holloway, I need to tell you something else. Your daughter is filing for divorce." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "Divorce?" "She filed papers last week. She's claiming that Albert manipulated her into participating in financial fraud against you, and that she's willing to testify against him if charges are filed." I sat back in my chair, trying to understand what was happening. Stella was divorcing Albert and claiming he had manipulated her into lying to me. But I knew that wasn't true. I had spoken directly with Stella every time money changed hands. "Detective, I need you to understand something. My daughter was a willing participant in this. She wasn't manipulated. She was a partner. Are you willing to make a formal statement to that effect?" "I am." Detective Chen closed her notebook. "Mr. Holloway, I have to ask, do you want to press charges?" The question hung in the air. Did I want to press charges against my own daughter? Against the girl I had raised, loved, sacrificed for? Can I think about it? Of course, but I should tell you, if you don't press charges, Albert will likely face minimal consequences, and your daughter's divorce attorney is already working on the narrative that she was an innocent victim of her husband's manipulation. After Detective Chen left, I sat in my garden for hours, thinking about what she had told me. Stella was trying to rewrite history, to paint herself as another victim of Albert's schemes rather than as a willing participant. The worst part was that it was a smart strategy. Everyone would want to believe that a daughter had been manipulated into betraying her father, rather than accepting that she had made a calculated choice to prioritize money over family. But I knew the truth. I had been there for every phone call, every tear-filled story about financial hardship, Every manipulation designed to make me feel guilty for having boundaries. Stella hadn't been Albert's victim. She had been his partner. 3 days later, Stella called me directly. "Daddy, it's me." Her voice was small, uncertain, nothing like the confident woman who had demanded rent money and dismissed my hurt feelings about the wedding. "Hello, Stella. I need to see you. There are things I need to explain." "I think you've explained enough. Please, Daddy, just give me one chance to tell you what really happened." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. Not at my house, not at a restaurant, but at a park where we could talk privately without the pressure of an intimate setting. She was waiting when I arrived, sitting on a bench near the pond where I used to bring her to feed ducks when she was little. She looked thinner than I remembered, older somehow. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down beside her. "What did you want to tell me, Stella?" "I want you to know that I never meant for things to go as far as they did." "How far did you mean for them to go?" "I thought it would just be temporary. A few months of help while Albert found a new job." "And the lies about what the money was for?" "Albert said you'd be more likely to help if you thought it was for something responsible like student loans. So you decided to lie to me." "I decided to make it easier for you to say yes." "Easier for me or easier for you?" She was quiet for a moment. "Easier for me." Finally, honesty. "Stella, the detective told me you're filing for divorce." "I am. Albert, he's not who I thought he was." "What changed your mind?" "I found out about the other families, the other people he'd done this to." "And that bothered you?" "Of course it bothered me." "But doing it to your own father didn't bother you?" She started crying. "Daddy, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But Albert made it seem like it was normal, like all families helped each other this way. By lying? By doing whatever was necessary. Stella, do you understand that what you did to me wasn't love? It wasn't family support. It was manipulation. I know that now. Do you? Because you're sitting here telling me that Albert made you do it. But I was there for every conversation. I heard your voice making every request. I saw your tears when I hesitated. That wasn't Albert manipulating you. That was you manipulating me." She cried harder. "I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Are you sorry that you did it? Or are you sorry that it didn't work? I'm sorry that I hurt you. Are you sorry that you lied to me?" A longer pause. "Yes." "Are you sorry that you excluded me from your wedding?" "Yes." "Are you sorry that you treated me like an ATM instead of like your father?" "Yes." "Then why, Stella, are you telling the police that Albert manipulated you into doing all of this?" She wiped her eyes. "Because I need to protect myself." There it was, the truth behind the tears and the apologies. She wasn't sorry for what she had done to me. She was sorry for the consequences she was facing, and she was willing to throw Albert under the bus to avoid them. "Stella, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I'm not going to press charges against you or Albert." Her face lit up with relief. "But," I continued, "I'm also not going to lie to protect you. If the police ask me what happened, I'm going to tell them the truth. The whole truth." "Daddy, please. If you tell them I was involved, I could lose my job. I could lose everything. You should have thought about that before you decided to lie to your father for months. Please, I'm begging you. Stella, you made choices, adult choices. You chose to lie, to manipulate, to exclude me from your life while taking my money. Those choices have consequences. But I'm your daughter. Are you? Because daughters don't usually treat their fathers the way you treated me." She stared at me, and I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Fear, real fear that she might actually have to face the consequences of her actions without someone else stepping in to protect her. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "I don't want anything from you, Stella. I want you to take responsibility for what you did and figure out how to live with it." "And then what? Do we try to rebuild our relationship?" I looked at her sitting there, still trying to negotiate her way out of accountability, and I realized something important. The daughter I had raised, the one I had loved unconditionally, was gone. Maybe she had never really existed at all. "I don't know, Stella. That depends on who you decide to become." 6 months later, I heard through neighbors that Albert had pleaded guilty to elder fraud charges and received probation and restitution orders. Stella had avoided criminal charges but lost her job when the investigation became public. They had both moved away, separately. Albert back to his parents' house, Stella to an apartment across town that she could actually afford on her reduced income. I never heard from either of them again, but I did hear something else. Mrs. Henderson told me that her niece, who worked at a legal aid clinic, had mentioned a young woman who had come in seeking help with bankruptcy proceedings. A woman who had learned too late that the lifestyle she thought she deserved had cost her everything that actually mattered. I felt sad when I heard that, not because I wanted to help, but because I realized that some lessons can only be learned the hard way. As for me, I found something I hadn't expected: peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from knowing you've stood up for yourself, set appropriate boundaries, and refused to be used by people who should have loved you better. I started volunteering at a senior center, helping other older adults navigate family financial issues. I made new friends, people who valued my company rather than my bank account. I traveled a little, something I hadn't been able to afford when I was funding someone else's lifestyle. Most importantly, I learned that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about mutual respect, honesty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. I have that now, with the people I've chosen to be my family. People who would never dream of lying to me or using me or excluding me from their important moments. I'm 63 now, and for the first time in years, I'm genuinely happy. Not because I have everything I want, but because I finally have something I had lost: my self-respect. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is to stop enabling them to hurt you. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to let them face the consequences of their choices. And sometimes the family you build is better than the family you were born into. I learned all of that the hard way, but I learned it. And that knowledge, painful as it was to acquire, has given me something invaluable: the freedom to live the rest of my life on my own terms. That freedom is worth more than any amount of money I ever gave away. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.